might have a negative effect towards it.
Happening in South Africa.
Okay, let's go over here.
Thank you, Your Excellency. Victor Anakin from Sputnik Africa. Your Excellency, you mentioned the G20 declaration containing information about critical minerals. How credible and actionable is South Africa's promise to ensure that these critical minerals benefit mining countries in Africa rather than being exploited by external countries?
So I saw some hands at the back. Yeah, let's go over here. Yes. We can't hear you. Yeah.
How have the successive G20 presidencies of Indonesia, India, Brazil, and South Africa colleagues by BRICS impacted the formation of a new global governance architecture, given the growing influence of the BRICS group?
Thank you.
Please.
Let's see.
Please.
Okay. We are on question 5, so we'll still have to go at the back at some point as well.
Mathilde Boussillon from the French newspaper Le Monde. The foreign minister of Argentina earlier said his country cannot endorse the declaration. What does it mean exactly? And should we expect the declaration to be amended?
Thank you very much. No. Let's go there, that hand, SABC.
Joe Tukwana from the SABC. I want to know, why would the G20 countries choose to give responsibility to a member country that did not attend? Why is it not difficult for you actually to choose one of the countries that are present to charge them with the responsibility for the next arrangement?
Okay. I think just to collate all of these questions, I will then ask the Presidium here to respond, and then we will then take the next round of 5 after that. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much for all the questions. With regards to the first one, with regards to how are we going to conduct the handover and whether we view this as something that will continue to strain South Africa-US relations. Yes, it is correct. We have communicated to the US Embassy that South Africa welcomes the fact that the US now wants us to hand over to the US the leadership of the G20. And they've communicated this, it was very late, and also they stated that it will be a charge of the US in the US mission here in South Africa. And as you can see, this is a leaders summit. Heads of state, and the heads of state who are not here have designated appropriate officials who are engaging in this platform. And we want to differentiate between the handover and the deliberations that are currently happening. So those have been designated deliberations and so forth. So the handover must happen at the head of state level, or at least a minister who is properly designated by the President of the United States of America. So now that they have assigned a charge, we have said DERCO has equivalent officials of the charge. Hence, we welcome that they will now we will do the handover. We will do it at DERCO offices anytime from Monday. And arrangements will be made on the appropriate date where they can come. We do the handover of everything. There is a number of things that needs to be handed over with regards to the G20, except the ceremonial handover. And as DERCO, we are very much ready. We are prepared. And this cannot in any way strain relations, because we are doing it at an appropriate level. Because the charge is at the level of the official ambassador who will receive, and we are not going to show any disrespect to the US. We will accord them the equivalent respect by ensuring that the person who does the handover is an appropriate, equivalent of the charge. So that is what we are going to do. The only thing we said is that our president cannot hand over to a chair in the Leaders Summit attended by so many heads of state. So that is the decision, and that has been communicated to the embassy of the US. With regards to the critical minerals beneficiation to the African continent, indeed, you will have seen that South Africa also signed an agreement with the European Union, where value addition was clear in the whole of that agreement, that beneficiation must happen here in South Africa in terms of the critical minerals, but the declaration now takes it further for the whole African continent. And the compact with Africa that we have just now concluded makes this implementation practical and possible. As some of you who were there will have heard President Lorenzo said that it has now reached 50 of the African countries. That makes it now a compact of the African Union with the G20. And we are very excited by these developments. We want us to focus on the declarations and the outcomes of the declaration. And the countries that are present here have played a critical role, very robust, and we really appreciate their critical engagements. As you are aware, the engagements are continuing to unfold, and all those engagements are very positive. Thank you.
I just have to adjust the mic for my height deficit compared to the minister. I think there was a question on successive development, the impact of having 4 developing countries hosting the G20 presidencies. I think what has happened since Indonesia, India, Brazil, and what South Africa now concluding over the next couple of days is that the issue of sustainable development has been solidified in the G20's agenda. The fact that we could get the kinds of agreements that the minister just pointed out on inclusive growth, the critical minerals at source, these are all not just our own deliverables. It's deliverables that come from India putting sustainable development on the agenda, Brazil putting sustainable development and inequality on the agenda, and us taking that same platform and concretizing it. Our own themes are not vastly different to the themes developed by Indonesia, India, and Brazil. And I must also say the question is about developing countries. Our themes are not even that vastly different to those developed by Italy. Remember, Italy's presidency took place in the heart of COVID, and what COVID taught us was interdependence, and the negotiations even in Rome was about interdependence, and we've taken that trajectory forward. In terms of its impact on global governance, Brazil launched a very important initiative in the General Assembly last year, which is the roadmap on global governance. That roadmap still has relevance, and we mention it in the declaration that we will use that roadmap to continue with our initiatives to argue for reform of the UN, including the Security Council and all the other platforms of the UN and its specialized agencies. So that's been a major outcome, and it continues. There was a question about the declaration, and I think one delegation this morning saying that there's elements of that delegation that they may not be happy with. Just to say that this declaration was negotiated in good faith, and with one key member voluntarily absenting themselves from this. We had new dimensions to negotiate, and we did that very well, and through consensus, looking at what does consensus mean. Does it mean everybody in the room or those here present? And you'll see that our declaration talks about the leaders who gathered in Johannesburg. So the consensus talks about all of us who gathered, and that the declaration reflects that consensus after 5 long days of Sherpa negotiations and Stu Sherpas leading various elements of that. So lots of hard work went into it, and the declaration stands. One delegation spoke in the opening session about issues that they have challenges with, and this is exactly what happened, as our president pointed out, in Brazil with the same delegation last year. So the declaration stands just as much as the Brazilian declaration stands. Thank you.
Good day to everybody. Maybe I will just add on what the teacher just said about the impact of the 4 presidencies of the G20 coming from the global south. So what we had today in the statements by the heads of delegation, the presidents and prime ministers who are taking part in the discussion, was a very strong support for 2 very specific South African initiatives that build on the work that was done in India and Brazil. The first one was the establishment by President Ramaphosa of an extraordinary committee on global wealth inequality, which has since produced a report that was presented to President Ramaphosa. So what happened today is that we had a number of the heads of delegation in the first session expressing very strong support for this report and its recommendations. This report really seeks to place the question of inequality on the agenda of the G20 for the many years to come. Let us not forget its key messages. Amongst the messages that come from the report is that inequality is a choice, that inequality is a threat to democracy, and that, in fact, combating inequality is good economics for any country and for the world at large. So for us as South Africa, the presidents of the G20, we see this affirmation of the recommendations of this report as being very important. It builds on the legacy of the other presidencies from the South. The second report under the South African presidency is the report of the Africa Expert Panel that is chaired by our former finance minister, Trevor Manuel. And again, this report is focused on building a new partnership for Africa with the world, focusing on issues of the cost of capital, development in general. So this report was also received quite a broad support in some of the speeches that were made this morning. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much, DG and DDG and Minister, for that clarification. Okay, I see a hand right at the back there. Then we'll come back. Seemingly we concentrated here in the front.
Hello?
Yes.
Hello, good afternoon. Vitaly Mark from South News Agency. For the Minister, did during the summit you discussed the American proposal for the peace in Ukraine? And what is your opinion about these proposals? Thank you.
There's a hand behind there. Sorry, okay.
Good morning. Good afternoon, Kamalo Mishra from IOL. Now, I wanted to ask, with your tensions with the US, is South Africa going to attend the G20 summit in the US next year? Thank you.
I must say, it's interesting that we have shared the declaration, and it's been with you for some time, but we're getting very little questions about the declaration itself and its content. We'll take you. Thanks.
Thank you. So let me ask about the declaration. My name is Kosuke from Kyoto News. And first of all, I think as far as I remember, the last time that the G20 summit adopted the declaration on the first day of the summit is probably the G20 happened in India. And then first I'd like to hear your strategy or the background, why you decided to publish it on the first day. And secondly again, in the declaration, you mentioned a lot about the debt issue among the developing countries. And I was wondering, the declaration is declaration, but how can you be sure about the implementation of those solutions? Thank you.
Thank you. Let's come this side. Okay, we'll come to you, then we'll go to Ms. Python, and then like this. To the front here.
Good afternoon. This is just called Mwama from Jamestown News in the East End, the newspaper. Just to the minister, there is a press secretary of the USA. She has disrespected Cyril Ramaphosa. She said she heard Cyril Ramaphosa running his mouth a little bit, and President Trump did not appreciate that. So, what you respond to such disrespect to our president? Ndiabo.
Okay. Hopefully it's about the declaration, Ms. Python.
Hi, Nellie Payton from Reuters. My question is, as we know, Argentina's foreign minister said they did not endorse the final declaration. Was there any other country present that did not endorse the final declaration, or was it supported by all the countries present besides Argentina? Thanks.
We'll end with a question here about the declaration. You can give it to you can ask, and we'll end here with the way this lady's hands are.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Minister and delegates. So this is a question from, I'm Khawa Solomon from Hilal TV, channel 347 DSTV. Is there any benefits for South Africans after G20, especially for us in the rural areas? And what does this mean for South Africans with regards to getting jobs and what is left after G20?
Okay, this is where we're ending.
Please record for me.
Good afternoon. My name is Roberta Akanyang from Duma FM. Sadly, my question is not about the declaration, but something that was mentioned, of course, was about the climate and climate change. Some of the countries that are here have got, they're the ones who basically emit the most, problems into the environment, if I could put it that way. Were you direct in confronting them about this, and is there anything that they will do to change this? Thank you.
That's why we're here. That's a very relevant thing. Can I start, Minister, by asking the DG and the DDG, then you'll close off. You come here. You're okay. Overruled.
Oh. Yeah, thank you very much. There are 42 countries present here, and only one G20 member country is not here. So the countries that are present have focused on the G20 agenda. And the declaration speaks to the global challenges and how we must focus on them. And it is our view that we should all focus on that. What all of us who are here are agreeing on, the present countries. Because the absence of the US is voluntary. They voluntarily absented themselves. So, as South Africa, we have always been clear that the US is welcome. They can come at any time. Even the issue of the handover, we are not refusing. We are saying it must be done at an appropriate level. And that's why we say it will be done at the DERCO office with the equivalent official. So we are not refusing. They are G20 members. It's just an issue of where to do it and how it will be done. But we focused on the agenda of the G20. Whether we discussed peace, yes, the declaration does contain issues related to peace, anchored on the UN Charter, from bullet point number 3 to the last bullet point. And the last bullet point, if I may read it, you will hear that it summarizes a number of things. It says, we concur that guided by the purpose and principles of the UN Charter in its entirety, we will work for a just, comprehensive, and lasting peace in Sudan. As most of you are aware, a huge humanitarian disaster is currently unfolding in Sudan. So the G20 said we need to work for lasting peace for Sudan. for the Democratic Republic of Congo, for the occupied Palestinian territories, Ukraine, as well as ending other conflicts and wars around the globe. And only with peace we will achieve sustainability and prosperity. So there is a number of paragraphs dealing with the issue of peace. Is there any benefits for South Africans in the rural areas out of the G20? As I have said, 85% of the global economy are member countries of the G20. So everyone is impacted anywhere in the world. From Shushuwe and KwaZulu-Natal, Cape Town, to Ethiopia, to anywhere in China, anywhere in the US, anyone in the world is impacted by decisions that are made by the G20. The DG will explain how they work in terms of non-binding, how they are persuasive, but we are all impacted. And the debt cost sustainability report and the inequality report, I think it put it starkly and very clear. For example, it does show that in some countries, mostly in the African continent, who are now in a debt difficulty, you have to make a choice between funding education, healthcare, infrastructure and so forth, and paying the debt. And the payment of the debt, sometimes you find that an African country with similar metrics with another country in the north, everything is the same. Risk profile, everything is the same. But the African country pays more on interest than the one in the north. And if we're paying equally, maybe that amount will have went to education and so forth. When you look at artificial intelligence, digital transformation and so forth, look at the amount content creators are receiving in Africa from TikTok, Apple, and some of these big platforms. It's a little meager amount that we are receiving. But when you look at the global north, individuals are receiving huge amounts because there is clear investment in terms of research, innovation. They are not only consumers of digital and artificial intelligence, but they are on the research and the innovative part. So we are saying this G20 must enable us to revolutionize that the African continent content creators must have backing and research support, data centers and so forth, so that also at the end of the year when Apple declares that this is the amount we have paid, at least you can see how much also went to the African continent. So artificial intelligence, the Prime Minister of Ethiopia has said through the compact, they can see the impact of the G20 already when you go to Ethiopia, how artificial intelligence is helping them to fight, to deal with climate change responses, how to navigate, build new infrastructure and so forth. So the impact is huge. It impacts anyone, anywhere in the world. And I think DG can deal with the other ones of climate change and any other ones that they may feel necessary. So in a nutshell, this meeting is impacting everyone in the world. Thank you.